Former Tennessee State wide receiver Chris Rowland has been on fire in the UFL this year, and I believe his ability specifically in the kick return game will garner consideration for him making it back to the NFL for a second time. Oh yeah, it's Locked On HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusions. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode wraps up with a look at Alabama A&M's what feels like a conscious effort to focus on foreign players in their men's basketball recruiting class. Prior to that, we'll be looking at the NCAA track and field semifinals on the men's side and doing a little bit of a quick preview for the women's side, because by the time you've heard this, it had ran already. But I double booked. I had something I already had to do. So wasn't able to do that completely in segment 2. But in the first segment of today's show, we'll be looking at Tennessee State or former Tennessee State wide receiver Chris Rowland, because he has taken the UFL by storm, specifically in the kick return game. And I honestly believe that his performance has been enough to garner NFL consideration for him. For many people, professional spring football is a second chance. It's a land of second chances, because on one hand, it's your second chance to be able to play professional ball in America, right? Because you could go to the CFL, but it's your second, and I can't think of any other opportunity to play professional ball on a national level if you don't make it to the NFL, right? And I get it, because these games are played on national TV. They're aired. You really get to have that professional experience, even if it's not in the NFL. But the other way to look at this as a second chance is to look at it from the view of a lot of these players aren't stopping here. This isn't what they're trying to do for the rest of their professional career. For many people, this is a way to go to the negotiation table and say, look at what I can do. Maybe you have some players who have made it to the NFL and are no longer there. A guy like Kiki Cutie, right? And then you're looking at a guy like Chris Rowland, who also had made it to the NFL at one time. But then you have other players who hadn't made it to the NFL before, and this is their second opportunity at trying to make it again, because they've all gone through the process of attempting. Some have gotten closer than others. Some have made it and are trying to get back to where they used to be. When you're looking at a guy like Rowland, he's probably in between, because he signed as a UDFA, and then he ended up going to the practice squad, but he's looking to maximize his talents to where practice squad is not in his future. He's looking to be a real impact on a professional team, on an NFL team. Let me be specific, right? And I believe that what he's done in the UFL this year has been enough to garner real consideration to get invited to training camp. You're not going to make the team based off what you did in the UFL, but you can get invited to camp, and then you will make the team based on what you did there, right? Let's look at Chris Rowland, because he is currently at the end of this season, not even currently, at the end of this season, he has become the UFL all-purpose leader in yards. So he's over 1,600, and a large lump sum of that comes from his ability to return kicks. Yes, he's a wide receiver. That is his positional designation. But that's not really his greatest impact. He has 262 yards on 20 catches and 3 touchdowns. That's solid. I'll take that. Don't get me wrong. But it's not great. It's not the leading number on his team. But that's not what he's asked to do. That's not what I'm looking for him to be. I'm looking for him to be a kick returner here and at the next level. See, I think that being able to return kicks, and he has the most kick return yards in the UFL, being able to return kicks is going to help him on two fronts. One, People at the bottom of the roster always have to be able to use some sort of, unless you're a quarterback, you have to be able to be used on some sort of special teams. And I know we always say that with HBCU players. Can he contribute on special teams when projecting him even as a prospect? And I don't know if we ever really gotten to why that's important. That's because the majority of HBCU players are going to come into the roster and be at the bottom. They're going to be fighting for roster spots as a rookie. So when you're fighting for a roster spot, the deciding factor a lot of times, and this isn't just for rookies, this goes for everybody. There's veterans who are on the roster continuously who you will rarely see actually make your lineup. You will rarely actually see on defense or on offense, but they're a gunner on special teams. And they do something like that that makes them valuable. So yes, if you're 40 to 53, be able to play some special teams. And that's exactly what Chris Rowland can do. So Rowland, as I said, was the leader, or is, I should say, I keep trying to speak like it's past tense, but he is the leader in kick return yards. He is the leader in all-purpose yards. But here's another little tidbit, and the second reason why I think it's valuable is the NFL is adopting the XFL's kickoff return format this year. I don't know how drastic it'll be. I think it may be something very minor, but the timing of it could be different, and it could take a little bit of acclimation, but not for Rowland because he's done this, and he done it at a high level. He had the first kickoff return in the final week of the season, the first kickoff return for a touchdown in the UFL's history. So they're going to be using that kickoff format. Though it's small, I do believe that that could give him a little bit of an advantage, in my opinion. And I've been thinking, like, is the UFL a better route to the NFL than HBCUs? Now, granted, it's not like coming out of high school, you can choose to do that. This is not a G League situation where I can choose to go to the UFL instead of going to college. I'm just thinking, is it better? And I go back and forth with it, to be honest. The reason I can't decide is because it feels like whether you're an HBCU prospect or if you're a UFL guy, you're still fighting for the same region of spots. I don't remember the last time I seen a UFL guy come out and just, yeah, you're making the roster no matter what. I just can't think of that, in my opinion. So they still have to fight for a roster spot. But it does seem like you get a little bit more consideration, probably because you're going against other players from bigger schools who didn't make it. I don't know. I feel like the reverence around the UFL is different than the reverence around HBCUs when talking about national conversations. Just something I keep going through. But Rowland has been here for 3 years now. This is his third year. He was in the USFL before they came together with the XFL and made it the UFL now. This is something that he's been doing for a minute now. Was a UDFA in 2021 with the Falcons, moved on to the Titans practice squad a year later, but he's been trying to fight for this opportunity. I'll see if he can make it, but I genuinely believe, and I'm not one for predictions, and you'll hear more about that in the second segment. I genuinely believe that he's done enough to garner consideration for a camp invite, and then that's when he'll be fighting to make the roster. Now, as you push forward, NCAA Track and Field Nationals, I want to give a quick update, and Jamarion Stubbs continues to be the headliner of this group, and I think he may be able to stand on the podium when this is all said and done. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors, and eBay Motors is perfect for everything that you may need: passion, drive, patience. This is the formula for winning a championship, but it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. If you're anything like me, you probably named your car. And once you name your car, you have a personal attachment to it. This is your baby. You would want to take care of your baby, wouldn't you? The only place to do it, you want to get your diapers, you want to get your formula, you want to get your clothes, you want to get your bibs, you want to get all of that, you want to get a babysitter. All of that can be found at eBay Motors. It doesn't matter if you're looking for superchargers, your roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, everything in between to make your baby go and also make your baby look good. Right? You don't want your baby to just be healthy. I'll be seeing these kids with the new shoes. Go ahead and get yourself some new rims. You can go get them on ebaymotors.com. It has over 120 million parts, and they're the number one place for all of your car needs. So go ahead and go to ebaymotors.com. That is ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked on HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked on Sports Today. Say the whole thing, spell the whole thing, and subscribe to the whole thing. That's Locked on Sports Today, the first of its kind, 24/7, all day, every day, live sports network on YouTube. Go ahead and check out what they're talking about as soon as I'm done, and check it out 30 minutes later. Could it be something completely different afterwards? Now, we've looked at Chris Rowland. We've looked at the UFL to hopeful NFL pipeline. But now I want to look at some track and field because this is their time. This is their moment to shine. It's not quite their Super Bowl, but the Paris Olympics are around the corner. This is the NCAA Track and Field National Championship. So I guess in a way for collegiate track and field, this kind of is their Super Bowl. And on Wednesday, you had the conference championships, and you had Jamarion Stubbs, who was the star of the regional portion. He continues to be the star of this national championship portion, and he has punched his ticket to the finals in one of the two events that he did partake in. Now, Stubbs was running the 100 and 200 meter semifinals. He only punched his ticket in the 200, but I think that's kind of what I expected, to be honest, when just tracking how everything went. In the 100, he was an automatic qualifier in the first one, and that's what got a lot of the excitement, I believe, because he won his 100-meter heat, and he kind of played catch-up to do it. It was a great closing speed on that, but when you came to the second round in the quarterfinals, he didn't make it as an automatic qualifier. He did qualify, but it wasn't an AQ. So now I'm like, I'm looking more excited towards the 200. And then when it came to the 100, he ended up not punching his ticket to finals. His road stops here, but his road in Eugene is still going because now he's in the 200 meters. And this is where I get extremely excited because not only for him, but then also for everybody that he's running against. The 200-meter heats have been ebbing and flowing, and Stubbs has been ebbing and flowing with that. Like the time of the leader versus the time of Stubbs. First off, he was the leader in the first round. In the in the first round, which is what it's actually called, the first round, he had the top time. In the quarterfinals, he had the third best time. In the semifinals, he had the fourth best time. Now, yes, that's going down from 1 to 4, admittedly so. But at the same time, he's right there. And the difference between him and a 3 or him and a 2 is very small. In his semifinal run, he ran a 2015, which was actually his worst time, but it's not that bad when you look at it overall. In the quarterfinals, though, he ran a 1995, which would have been good for top 5 in the country this year. I think the best time right now is a 1993, if I'm not mistaken. I know that's top 3, but I think it's either 1 or 2, and I'm pretty sure that was 1. But you have some really good runners in this 200. You have this guy from Florida, McCoy. Dang, I'm catching a brain fart. But I do remember him specifically. When you're looking at Stubbs, he's won every single one of his heats. He won his first round heat, ran his quarterfinal heat, won that one, won his semifinal heat. So now you're going into where there's no more heats. This is just the finals. It's just you now. What are you going to do? And I'll be very interested. If he can run sub 20, I think you'll see him on the podium. You may even see him get first. Because when he ran a 2005, he had the leading. Then he dropped it down, got a 1995. He was third there. So everybody ran faster. And then this time when he ran a 2015, nobody ran sub 20. So it's kind of like everybody's around that, excuse me, everybody's kind of around that same ballpark. And he stayed there. So there's no reason to count him out, despite the fact that it's dropped from first to third to fourth. I'm very excited for this one. I'll be watching it very closely to see where he lands, to see where a guy like McCoy out of Florida lands. I think they got a Houston guy as well. This is going to be a very interesting race. So I suggest that you watch this very attentively, and I suggest that you try to take out your bias and just enjoy it as a fan of it. In the 110 hurdles, we're only going to focus on the guys who really punched their ticket. And the next guy and the only other runner was Samuel Bennett. They had 3 HBCU athletes who were able to run in the semifinals, but only one made it. And that was Howard, who had ran one of the best Howard's runners, Samuel Bennett, who had ran one of the best times in the country this year. But I didn't feel like he kept up that same progress the whole way. But his ability to close, very similar to Stubbs' ability to close in the 100-meter of the first round, that's what got him here. Because you saw him kick it into another gear. I want to say in the last hurdle, maybe the last two hurdles, you just saw him kick it into another gear. And that other gear not only allowed him to finish with a personal best, which bettered he has one of the best times in the country, but he bettered even that, right? So you saw him rise to the occasion in the semifinals, but then also he was only 600ths of a second ahead of the person behind him. And Bennett was able to clinch that last qualifier spot for the final. So had he not hit that burst, and maybe he just was a little bit slower, 600ths of a second is nothing. I can't even say a word in 600ths of a second. So it's a very minor difference, but his ability to close late is the reason that he was able to be 600 of a second ahead of the next person. And it's the reason why his 600th of a second is what decided whether or not he was going to be a qualifier in the 110-meter hurdles. So those are the two guys who have made it. But now I want to kind of shift a little bit of focus to the women. And I'm going to be very brief. So I have to go do something. So I'm recording this early. And at the time that I'm recording, we've seen nothing. Like the women have not ran. You have two events. And I haven't been able to catch either one. I'm so early. Unfortunately, I'm so early. And y'all, I just can't record late no more. I remember back in the day, and I'm about to sound old, but back in the day, I used to be able to record late in the mug. I was recording at midnight, getting it out to you, feeling good. I can't record at midnight no more. I just can't do it. I ain't got that in me no more, right? So with me having something to do, I can't come back and record late. I'm gonna be exhausted, and I'm not gonna be able to give you a good show. But you have the Howard 4x1, and you have Howard Simone Watkins, and those are the two events that you should be looking out for. I'm just gonna give a quick little preview because it's happened already. Howard's 4x1 is in Heat 1. It's going to be really tough for them because they're going against two of the top 10 times in the nation this year. And Howard has the sixth best season best, right? So of all the competitors, they rank sixth in their heat as far as who has the season best. Everybody's not going to run their season best, right? I may run a 5 flat and whatever. I may run a 5 flat. Dang, I ain't gonna lie. When I said 5 flat, all I could think was the 40. I'm like, dang, that's kind of slow. But whatever. I'm not an athlete. So I may run a 5 flat in the 40, right? My best time all year. That's what I've ran. But it does not mean that I'm going to run the 5 flat right then. I could run a 4.93. I could run a 5.2. Like it varies. But the best that I've run is a 5 flat. Anyway, now with Simone Watkins, she comes in with the 12th best time in the nation this year. So I feel a little bit more confident about her. It's going to be a tough road because you're in the finals now. You're in the semifinals for them, but you're facing all of the best runners. So it's no longer facing the 50th best runner. She got 3 of the top 10 against her in her heat. And in both of these is going to have the top 2 runners or top 2 teams in the relays case. You're going to have those 2 entities at the top, automatic qualifiers in each heat. And then after that, it's the next 3 fastest. So we'll see what they're able to do. I'm really rooting for Watkins because I feel a little bit more confident about her, but I'll be excited to see what happens with the relay. Trust me, I'm going to go back and watch both of these races. I just can't come back and report to you about it. But what I can report to you about is Alabama A&M men's basketball because they brought in 5 new recruits going into the next season, and 3 of those recruits have foreign roots. And I want to explore if this is a conscious effort as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Alabama A&M men's basketball has loaded up on foreign talent. I'm not sure if this is a conscious effort. I do believe that the coach himself and his history would make you think that, okay, I could see him purposely going out to get these foreign players. But I'm really interested in it. Alabama A&M basketball recruiting has been a frequent conversation of the offseason. Now, with the women, it was clear because you had Dawn Thornton coming in. So once you lose a coach, the upheaval starts. Then when you bring in a coach from the SWAC, it's how many of her UAPB players are going to come in with her? How many of those Alabama A&M players are going to stay now that they have a little bit more of a solidified head coach? And she was able to actually keep 2 players based off the fact that she was recruiting them to to Arkansas Pine Bluff before she even got this Alabama A&M job. But that was a conversation, right? I remember it. Of course I do. I did it. But like, I remember having that conversation commonly. Amaya Simmons, right? Like Alicia Wilson. Like, I was just very curious if she would be able to keep these players. Some she did, some she didn't, right? And then on the men's side, they brought in a Taiwanese player because you brought in a Warren Ye, who he was a player who is highly regarded, and he's from Taiwan. He went to a prep school. So like, I was thinking about that also, but that's where we pick it up, because he's not the only foreign player to be recruited this year. I thought it was a big deal when you brought somebody in, and now I see, the majority of your class. I'm not hyping it up. The majority of the Alabama A&M men's basketball class does have foreign roots. And the reason I say foreign roots as opposed to a foreign player is because one plays for the Puerto Rico national team, but he played high school in Georgia. So it's a little bit different. But when you look at Coach Otis Hughley, almost hit the third, Coach Otis Hughley Jr., he would be the coach who pulls this off. When you just look at his resume, when you just look at what he's done in his career, his background is littered with foreign coaching experience. So now you bring somebody with foreign coaching experience. He was a part of NBA China. He ended up coming back to China over a decade later. So obviously he had a nice experience. He came back over a decade later, and that's where he ended up becoming a head coach as well. So you're looking at all of these opportunities that he's been in. He was a part of the Nigerian women's national team, brought them, knocked off a couple of top level programs as far as just, I think, Turkey, Australia. But he's had success, and he's also familiar with the foreign game. So if there was any coach, right, Otis Hughley Jr. has coached overseas. He's went to these foreign players. He's been in these coaches. He's been around, right? And maybe not specifically Taiwan, maybe not specifically Belgium, right? But he's been in foreign areas and he's coached. So he's no foreigner to the idea of coaching international players. And now instead of going across to them, he's bringing them to Alabama A&M. And let's start it off with the guy that I did mention, and that's Warren Ye. Warren was the number one 19 and under player in Taiwan on their Olympic national team. So he came to the States, and he was a part of a Northeastern prep school in a prep league. Man, the first time he came here, and the first time he was a part of this prep school, 2 games back to back. First getting acclimated to the American game, and he averages 17.5 points between those 2 games. And he's a hot shot from 3 too. We know he can shoot. That's at least what he was projected to be. Now you have another player, and David Verstetten, and you're looking at him. He's very similar to yeah. Instead of 19 under, David was top number 1. I'm talking about both of these players, number 1 under 20 in the country of Belgium. So he went to prep school just like Ye did. They both went to prep school on different sides of the country, right? Make sure I said that right. Verstaten. That's what I think it is. David Verstaten. I'm going to call him David because I believe in respect. And if I'm messing up this name, I don't want to do it repeatedly, but I believe that it's David Verstaten. But David's top player under 20 in the country of Belgium, went to a prep school, this time in LA or in California. So you're looking at very similar paths, and I think that's just to get acclimated to the American game. So he's kind of had a year, a little bit of practice to be able to come into Alabama A&M and not have it be a start from relative scratch, right? Because I'm just thinking about the differences in style of play that he may be facing. And then you also have Jalen Cologne, who he's a part of the Puerto Rican national team, but he went to school in Georgia. He's another player who can shoot the 3 out of this world. He has the most 3-pointers in school history, in his high school history. You're looking at a guy who has the most 3-pointers in a single game with 12. This is a 6'2" point guard who can shoot the 3. You're looking at Warren Ye, who can shoot the 3. You're looking at Alabama A&M, who was one of the worst shooting teams in the SWAC. They had 3.2 or 4.2 threes made per game. That was last in the conference. You're looking at second to last as far as just, I think, percentage. Like this was not a strong suit of the team. So yes, they're getting foreign talent, and that's a storyline. But I think the most important impact is the fact that they can shoot the 3 ball. Now, the 2 American players, sorry to hold y'all out, but y'all don't really fit this narrative. Quincy McGriff and Darius Ford. They both actually transfer in. So they're transfer players. These three guys are either prep school or high school players. So when you're looking at Alabama A&M, I think it's very interesting the fact that they have a kind of a divide in their recruiting class. Alabama A&M men's basketball has two players who had to go to prep school and are coming from Belgium and Taiwan. Then you have another player who plays on the Puerto Rican national team. All three of those players are national team players. So I think that the idea, and the one who played in Georgia has two state titles. So I think that these players will be able to be mentally prepared for the moment. And then you have two other guys who are a little bit older, and they're going to be transferred in. So this is a strong 5-man class for Alabama A&M men's basketball. Now on tomorrow's or Monday's episode, we'll be back. The Celebration Bowl has moved the date. I'm looking for more information about that because it's only a week after the SWAC championship. And I'm not sure how I feel about that, but we'll explore it as we continue on next week. Man, I really want to talk about it now, but I just want more information. Anyway, until next time that we hear each other, family, and that happens, take care, stay blessed. Peace.